Good morning, Lady Democrat here with your top Democratic stories. Now, I want to recap because there's a lot been that's been going on with the Democrats. Um, you know, there's been repeated calls for Biden to step down. There have been talks about a contender, which would be Kamala Harris. Now, speaking of the Kamala Harris situation, Kamala Harris, let's all remember this. Kamala Harris is the one that opened the water. She is the one that told Biden that this would be a good idea. So, in putting her as a contender, that would be one issue that, as Democrats, we would probably really need an explanation about. All right, so moving right along. I want everybody to be aware, if nobody was, that our president, Joe Biden, has been in politics for 45 years. 45 years. Okay. On last night, he did an interview with George Stephanopoulos. Okay, so this interview was a rebound for Biden from that poor debate performance that he did last week on Thursday. Now, before the interview with George Stephanopoulos, California Governor Newsom, he attended a Biden Harrison event where he was speaking and saying, what Biden has done, how many jobs he had created. And we actually learned from him that he met with Biden on Wednesday. And, he also met with 20 some plus governors. And they were all discussing this, and they are all backing Joe Biden. So let's go, Joe. Now, Biden was heard in a private interview with Democrats telling them he really thinks he needs more sleep. Who could get mad at that? We all need more sleep. I agree. And he's older, so he probably does. Okay. Now, the analysts from CNN and Fox are both saying that it is time that Biden takes a cognitive test and releases the results to the public. Now, what was also released yesterday, which was not good news for the Democrats, is the deficit. The deficit was released, and we are $91 trillion in debt from helping Ukraine and Israel in their wars. So that is a substantial amount. I don't believe we've ever had a deficit that high. $91 trillion. Ooh, what a shopping spree I would go on with that. Okay, so prior to Biden walking into his interview with George Stephanopoulos, Biden spoke to the supporters, and he was basically saying, we have to win. This is one of the most dangerous elections because if Trump does win, Trump has said some very terrible things. For instance, Trump said that if he wins, he would make this a worse dictatorship country than Hitler. So, that has to be concerning to even Republicans, I would imagine. Please feel free to jump in here. Anything you want to say, type in on the comment bar. I'm here. We're discussing this. Now, he was seen joking with a child, So you can see the fun-loving part of him. And apparently he's not using any teleprompters since the poor debate performance. So that seems to be working. He said a couple of things that were very bizarre. For instance, on the Philadelphia Ward radio interview show, Biden said He is proud to be the first Black woman to serve as a vice president under the first Black president. This was on Tuesday. So, I mean, listen, words do get jumbled. People are older. And, at least he admitted that, and he admitted that he doesn't do things like he used to anymore. So, let's give him some props for that, right? Now, on the National Post, they want to quote, he was on the White House lawn on the 4th of July and said, ho, 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 at the beginning of the 4th of July speech. Democrats were concerned that maybe he didn't know what holiday it was. So, there's a lot of questions that were answered, and I'm about to get to those for the debate, for the interview. All right. So as we all know, the interview aired last night on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. Now, Nancy Pelosi, which is one of Biden's closest allies, she wanted to know, was this just a bad episode, or is this the sign of something more serious? So Biden was questioned on that, and I quote, Biden said, he was so sick that he had the doctors test him for COVID. And then he was also tested for a number of other infections, because that's how sick he's saying he was. He did admit that he had a bad night, but he reiterates that this is because he had a cold. He says he's the guy who brought down inflation. Now, he has 2.9% in the past 6 months. So it is coming down, probably not as fast as we need it to come down, but it is coming down. And then he went on to say this is a very tough country. And he said the way that Donald Trump left it, it's very challenging to try to put together a messed up country. George Stephanopoulos asked him, are you sure that you should be running? And Joe Biden said he wouldn't be running if he couldn't run. Biden claims he is still in good shape. And then George Stephanopoulos pressed him about having a cognitive test done and releasing the results to the American people. Biden did not want to answer this question. I watched this interview. He ran around this question 38 times. And what I mean ran around was he repeated the same answer multiple times. And his answer was he has a cognitive test every day by running this country. I want to talk about that because that is the truth. If he's still able to run the functions of day-to-day routines and he's still able to make the calls that need to be made, and he still understands what he's doing on a day-to-day basis, if you ask me, that is a cognitive test every day. So, that was his answer. And George went around multiple ways of asking him this question, and multiple times his answer was, I have a cognitive test every day. Okay. And then George said, why haven't you had a cognitive test? And Biden said, no one has told me yet, not even my doctor, that they feel I need one. So he's reiterating that his doctors are well aware. He says that he gets the same presidential care as every other president. And he said that none of his doctors have suggested him getting a cognitive test done. So He also said he's the guy that shut Putin down. He's the guy who put NATO together. He's the guy who stopped some foreign trade with Japan. And then he said the character of the president is what shapes this country. So he's obviously saying that he feels he has the character to run this country. Now, he says he's being honest about his ability to run this country. He said he's confident that he can beat Trump. He says that the polls are tossed up. And then he said this: no one is more qualified than me to run this country. Then he proceeded to say, Trump is a pathological liar. Trump lost more jobs than he created. Now, when we listen to Trump, Trump says he created more jobs than he ever lost. Then he proceeded to say the top Democrats have told him to stay in this. He said he had a long talk with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and they have told him to stay in this race and do not bow out. So I think that's what Joe's going to do. And then Joe ended the interview by saying, I will not back down, and I will continue to stay in this race. So, I've said it once before and I will say it again. Let's go, Joe. Let's go, Joe. All righty, this is Lady Democrat signing off.